Hi, everyone. How are you? It is hard to believe that this is the last recording for this academic year or this year for 2020. Well, no, not for 2023, but for this first section of 2023. It's really hard to believe that this is the last formal lesson that we've had or we're having. And I had mine yesterday with the children. And what we did, they were to teach me the lesson. And I like to do that every once in a while. I've done it before, maybe once or twice. But as they're getting older, they're getting more comfortable, not only with the material, but in the style of teaching, or they certainly copy me. It's like cookie cutter, which is really funny. Um, it makes me look at myself and go, whoa, maybe you should do it another way, but not really. They're really very serious about it. And I'll say to them, and their parents are telling me, boy, I just see them sitting down and scurrying and trying to figure things out and making sure you would understand the lesson. It just cracks me up, which is great. But I do think it does teach a lesson. I think it's a way of preparing them for evangelization purposes, that if they can feel comfortable teaching grandma in a safe place, and not necessarily that they're right or who's wrong, but a question of feeling comfortable in the process of teaching and learning. I think that's great. If we accomplish that as a part of this, as a side gift, I think that's because so many pieces go into this whole dynamic of teaching with grandchildren. So yes, so they prepare for the lesson. And it's like I said, they're so funny because they totally switched the role and I become the student. So I had to do my homework. I had to be ready and be prepared as a student because I knew they were going to question me and we were going to go through the lesson and they were going to ask me questions. So I really, not that I'm never unprepared, but it was just taking it from a different perspective as a student. And that is good because you want to be a good model for them. You want to make sure you're in tune with this lesson and that you taking it seriously and you mean business. But it's also great learning and your enthusiasm comes in with that. So that was good. Before we started the lesson, we did do an opening prayer and they said, well, Grandma, you do the opening prayer because I always have them do it. So I did. And then they followed through and prayed for a lot of things yesterday. And then they prayed. And I love it because Justin will then say, I pray to you, God, for a successful lesson that we might learn. So I just see the development and I like it. I think also, though, to be honest, it's the end of the year. They're a little antsy, but they felt a little sad that this was it. This was, but we'll talk about that later. I just want to get through talking to you about the lesson itself. After opening prayer, I gave them the assessment to do for Unit 4, which they did. And they did pretty well. They would get 13 out of 15. And I think one got 12 or 11 or 12 out of 15, which is fine. And I said, are you happy with that? They were. But what I am watching them do, they're thinking, like, as they take it. Well, for example, yesterday, one of the answers was either conscience or conversion. There were two options. And they knew it was, that, and they weren't sure. And they think and to find the answer. Sometimes it's just a matter of elimination, that they get the answer. But yesterday, one little incident. The question was a true or false question. Mary and Elizabeth were the sisters of Lazarus. And they got it correct, but they couldn't remember the other sister's name. They knew it wasn't Elizabeth because they know she and John the Baptist are connected. So, and they're thinking, Grandma, wasn't it? It was an M name. They both were M names. And I said, yeah. And Mary, Martha. And they were all jumping up. I said, well, it just seems like everybody in Scripture was Mary. There's so many Marys in Scripture, common name. So I like my point of this whole thing is I like the way they're thinking and processing and starting to think through, not just learning and being indoctrinated about it. So they were, we went through the gospel, and I have to tell you, this gospel, it takes us again now before the crucifixion, the resurrection. It has to do with, it takes place at the Last Supper. And it's all about Jesus saying, you really want to know who the Father is, you have to go through me to find out. And I think that it could be complicated. But again, for younger children, they're getting this whole idea of Jesus is, I love Jesus, and they're not quite on the critical thinking part of it. But what is Jesus really saying? You have to know me, come through me. What if you're not Catholic? That was the question. Does that still mean you don't go to heaven? And it's just those kinds of questions, and there's a lot of gray areas. So I think we have to understand that not everything is black and white, especially in the field of religious studies. We know what we're told through scripture and tradition, but then you take the real life experience and you have these questions. So it's good to have that discussion. And I love the fact they're open to discussion. And so am I. Sometimes we don't find the answer, and that's okay. We just went through a process of discussing. And that whole process brings you closer to each other, and it opens your mind to keep searching and to looking for some kind of peace when you do have a question. So we did the assessment. And like I said, this scripture passage was kind of complicated, but we got through it. And they showed me a video of this. They were cute, and we talked more about it. And then one of the things that jumped up at me, and how many times you read scripture, you could read it over and over and over again, was that so many times, now this is before the crucifixion, Jesus says, it begins with this scripture passage, is do not let your hearts be troubled. Or if you read post-resurrection stories, and whenever he greets the disciples, the apostles, it's, don't be afraid. Peace be with you. And I really need to pray on that, because for me personally, I need to sit with that. I think they're wonderful words, but Jesus always, that's how he starts. And I would take it as being Jesus's way of saying to us, this is my hope for you as well. Be peaceful. Trust me. Don't be troubled. And that's easy to say, because half the time we're all walking around troubled with something. So it's easier said than done for many of us. But it's a good reminder. And I think it's something we have to really sit with, as I'm hoping to do. That's where at least I am in my spiritual journey at this point. And been there before, but circumstances are different. So it's important that I think we sit with that, with Jesus, who means all about peace. Talk to the children about that too. Did you notice, what does that mean? Jesus is saying, don't be afraid. And that had a lot of meaning for them. And interestingly, it followed up somewhat on the theme, the gospel last week, of the good shepherd, and Jesus saying, I am the gate. You have to go through the gate, symbolizing him. And this is a follow-up to that. So yeah, I mean, that's the one to go to, is Jesus. And I also love the fact, and we discussed this too, when he says, where I am going, I will prepare a room for you. I love that idea, and I want to sit and pray on that too, and meditate on that. What does that mean? Obviously it means afterlife, but he's going ahead, and it's already prepared a place. So I find that very comforting and very hope-filled. I think that's a nice thing to think about and picture and meditate on. So that's I'm going to be doing this week as well. I also talked to them when we finished, and they did have a song. They picked a song, and they were very proud of this song. I'm sorry, the name of the person who sang it, the name is Redmond, the last name. And it was very appropriate, not only with this lesson, but as they said, to the close of the year, and to think of Jesus loving us, and Jesus is the one. This is what they said. They said, the children, that this song kind of summarized all that they've learned this year. And we talked a lot about it last week, but we talked more about it this week. What would you like to learn? What would you like to? And they're just fine with everything the way it is. So we'll see. We'll have that discussion again. But what I do want to do this summer, I do want to use the summer solemnities material that FLAM offers, because I was saying to them yesterday, we're going to meet and they're fine with that. I said, you have to remember, God doesn't take the summer off. God is always doing what God does. So we should pay attention to those solemnities, and they're important. Especially, I love the Acts of the Apostles. Love, love, love them. And I want them to get into learning more about Paul and what happened in the church. So I will, there's certain things that solemnities we're celebrating, and I want them to kind of look at that book with the Acts of the Apostles. I just think it's so rich in so many different ways. And being that I had been to Greece and in the footsteps of St. Paul was my trip, I can show them pictures as well when we talk about his traveling journeys to Ephesus and Corinth and wherever he went. So I want to do that this summer with them. I also want to do with them at the end of the summer before we start. Well, not so close to the end of the summer, but there is a whole, yearly assessment. I told them about it. I said, I'd like you to do it. And they said, fine. I said, just to see how much you need to know how much you've learned. I need to know how much you've learned. I need to know how much I've learned. So it's a good barometer for checking to see what we know and how we've dealt with it, how we learned it. So they're fine. They're just fine with that. We don't make it a big deal. It's like, this is what you do, and they're excited to see what they know. They're okay with what they don't know, and they will remember. So we will do that towards the end of the summer, or before we start up again, and then we'll do the pre-test before September starts, or maybe we'll do it at the first lesson. I'm not sure. The last thing, what I did with them, I wanted them to know how special this whole thing was for me as well, this process, and as a grandmother, what I am getting out of it, being with them. And I gave them little gifts. I said, listen, these are little gifts for you. I got Justin, it's a cross, and it has to do with the footprints, in the sand. And he read it, and he was very touched by it. So he said, can we talk about this? I said, sure. Yesterday wasn't the day, because right from there, we ate and then ran to their sister's spring concert. So the energy's still going with the gospel in the back of your mind, right? And I gave Sage little silver cross earrings. So she was very pleased with that. So just a little gesture, a little reminder that that they're special. And it's just that I enjoyed being with them this year. So they get it, and I get it. So it's been great. So I would suggest, this summer, think about things again, what worked for you, what didn't work, and think what you might want to do next year. Talk to the children about what they want to learn. I think that's a good way to start. And most likely you will hit a gospel during the year, the cycle that will, help you to do that, help you teach them that particular topic. So I wish you all a very safe, wonderful summer. Again, if you see the children or you seeing them, the beauty of this is because it's relational. We're related, and we will see each other. There's graduation parties, there's all kinds of things coming down the pike in the family, that I think it's always a reminder, and the talking, the conversation can continue. So I wish you again a wonderful summer, a blessed summer, good summer, productive summer, a restful summer. We all deserve that as well. Take care. I will see you in September. God bless.